Welcome back to the Always Aggressive podcast. Cory alongside Tanner Lipsett and head coach Tony Ersland. Thanks for joining us. Got a lot to talk about this week. We're going to get right to it. Coach, the NCAA, well, I guess they figured why make one announcement when you can make like 19 announcements. They dropped some really big news on the sporting world last week. And probably the biggest news as it relates to you guys and a lot of programs around the country is the extending eligibility for winter sport student athletes. First of all, before we get into the ramifications for your program, just give us a sort of a brief overview of what that generally means.
Yeah, I mean, they've got us scrambling pretty good I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see what it really means as we work through it. At first glance, there's the issues of money and bringing guys back, right? I mean, clearly in the middle of a pandemic when revenue is already tight and we are on the eve of playing football here in the Big Ten. So that's exciting and great. However, times are tough. So while on one hand you're really happy and excited for these kids, they get the year back. It's the absolutely right thing to do. It is, to possibly have some of these kids maybe miss 2 years because we're still in the middle of this, COVID crisis, I guess. It's the right thing to do, but there are always trickle-down ramifications. And so on one hand, while you're excited, now you're left to figure out how can we manage this in our current environment. And that's really what we're piecing through right now. There's going to be some leeway, in terms of, money or who you bring back and rosters and those things. But man, it's got us really re-examining, everything from recruiting to roster size to, what your needs are going to be 4 and 5 years from now, right. Which is a heck of a projection.
Yeah, I think it's another interesting point is going to be that, there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all model for this. This is going to affect everybody differently. One program's going to have 2 or 3 seniors. One program's going to have 7 seniors. Right. You know what I mean? Everybody's situation is going to be very, very different. You're going to have kids that want to come back. You're going to have kids that are ready to move on and start their life. And, they've got graduate school already set up, or they've already got a job, they've already accepted a job offer, or they, you know what I mean? There's all these other real life things that are going to be present and possible for these kids. And so it's going to be different. It's going to be interesting how different it is for everybody.
Yeah. And, you kind of mentioned, you said something there, working on a second degree. Some kids may be ready to go into the workforce and that's fine. But I think we're going to see a lot of kids picking up that second degree, yeah, which is awesome. But now, again, how do you finance that, within each school and your rosters? What does that look like? And honestly, it's in the very early stages of that for us. I mean, you make some decisions, but really, I'm hesitant to want to just, make harsh decisions now in terms of what your needs really are or where kids are at, because, how do you really know, maybe you've got these young kids that are sophomores on your roster, where are they going to be at in 3 years? You know what I mean? From injury to just other life things that come up and present themselves. So, yeah, you're going to have to be a little bit of a soothsayer maybe and projecting, but it's absolutely the right thing. I think it's a great problem to have. And I look forward to kind of tackling that challenge and really, looking at creative ways to bring those guys back so that we can, get to be where we want to be in terms of, competing for national championships and team trophies and things like that.
I think that's really interesting. The initial response is, okay, well, seniors get another year. Potentially you don't lose your year if something goes haywire in the spring and, the season, the end of the season is affected again, like it was last year. They don't lose their senior season, but it affects everybody on the roster, right? It's every man from all 4 or 5 years currently on the roster representing true freshmen to all the way up to 5th-year seniors currently. The initial reaction for a layperson like me is, well, that's great for seniors, but man, the jigsaw puzzle gets a lot harder when you're talking about, it affecting all 30 plus guys in the room.
Yeah. I mean, just think, you've had guys who got their years back last year. We have one of them, Emil Sundlin, had the hamstring issue. He was already given a year back, and now he's going to get another one.
Yeah.
And so you look at these young men and, okay.
Dr. Sundlin.
Right. He could look like me by the time he's out of here with the gray hair. I don't know. So we laugh, but those are real things. And those are discussions that will have to be had. I've told our team that, I'm going to sit down and really take a hard look at things. And then we'll start talking to guys, about maybe where they're at. Obviously you need to deal with your seniors first, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to look at our seniors and see what we can do. And find out kind of even where they're at, and I would say, we're going to have some guys who definitely want to come back. And we've got a few guys that maybe they're ready to move on because they'll have other degrees and they need to get into the workforce. But it'll be it won't be a one size fits all, as Tanner said. Every school will have different needs or different ways of tackling this problem, and so it'll be fascinating to see which way it goes.
And I've seen there was some chatter initially about like, well, you're giving this year back. Why didn't you give your last year back? There were a lot of people that were upset, mainly the seniors from last year. And I understand their plight and their situation.
It affected our group as much as anybody in the country.
Absolutely. You feel horrible for the likes of
right.
Dylan Lighty and Christian Bruner and, and Nate Limix, and the fact that, their stuff got cut short and so on and so forth. But the reality is, in giving this year back to these kids and, we're in the very early stages of planning this, and we have no idea what's coming with COVID and all the other, things down the pipe, politically, legally, so on and so forth. But this season is going to be very, very, very different.
Well, and I think that's why they made the decision to give them the year back, because, if they look at last year, and honestly, yeah, our heart breaks, Dylan Lighty, I'm sure, when Dylan and Christian, they saw the news, that's going to make your heart sink, right? Like, you missed it by a year on being able to do some things. But I think the overriding decision for the group of people who made this decision was, what's your experience going to be like this year? And we're already pushed to January 1, which means that your regular season is probably only going to be 8 weeks. It's going to be a limited number of dates of competition. And so you've already altered what that season is. And that's probably where they felt like, okay, last year we got to wrestle 95% of our season. Yes, we did miss, what for us is the biggest part of competing. So that's where your heart breaks for the seniors. But they did have, 95% of the season. And this group this year is not going to even get that. They won't get, yes, they could get the crack at the national title. Like I said, that's our biggest, carrot there for us. But you're still not going to get as much of a season as what those guys had last year. And I think that was obviously the overriding point in that decision.
And we still don't even know they're going to get 50% of the season, and we still don't even know what that's going to look like.
Right.
We don't know about fans. We don't know about testing. We don't know. We have no clue what that's going to look like.
Right, and no doubt, and that impacts student-athlete, experience, and that's a big part of what we do. We've talked about, obviously, there's big money aspects to this, but what that student-athlete experience is very important to us, and I think NCAA sports. And so you want to make sure you can still provide those guys the opportunity to have an experience.
I talked to two guys separately yesterday, and it was funny. They both kind of said the same thing. They are trying not to stress out about the things that they can't control. But it's driving them crazy because everything is, they don't know.
That's everything right now.
They don't know one day to the next what it's going to look like.
Yep.
And so, these are kids that are trying to go to class. They're trying to manage their weight. They're trying to get better. They're trying to, they're trying to do all these things that, they're 18 to 22-year-old kids. And they don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. And so, I really feel for them, but it's good to hear that they're trying. They've got a head on their shoulders about the fact that they're trying not to worry about those things. But man, I feel for them because this is I know what it's like for me, and I'm not doing anything. I'm not trying to win a national title.
Right. Well, but it's like you just said. It's the same for you. It's the same for Cory. It's the same for me. It's the same for Joe Smith down the street right now. Right. And so it's a great life lesson for kids. Maybe it really frames, what we're talking about. And we've talked about this at length here, right? But staying in the moment, trust the process, control what you can control, right? All of these, coaching, sayings, right? It really is. It kind of really, has a different meaning, hopefully, for these kids now, because truly all you can do is wake up today and take care of today. Stay in the moment. If you're talking to your best friend, man, be engaged there. Be in that moment. If you're going to study, go be engaged with studying. Like, getting ahead of yourself serves no purpose, in these times. All we can do is just take care of our business now, do the best we can. So when these big moments do come, we're ready, and you can embrace it and feel confident about it because we did the work ahead of time. So I hope that's the way these guys are kind of finding some peace. Like, hey, nothing's promised. Tomorrow's never promised, not for you, not for me, not for the guy down the street. And so we really just need to take care of now.
Before we move on from this topic, you mentioned a little bit ago, how this ruling affects recruiting. I don't want you to give away the store, but just like y'all have said, it's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all type of a scenario for everybody. But how's it going to affect, or how do you think it's going to affect your approach with recruiting? Has it changed anything?
Well, it has made you go back to your whiteboard, you know what I mean? And you look at that board, that recruiting board that you have, and really have discussions about, do we really need guys at this way if we're projecting another year, okay? And so it just has forced you to really go back and evaluate again and look at, do you need this weight at this time? Can you delay it a year? And so, I think, going back to the different teams, some teams are heavily senior laden. You look at Iowa, they've got 5 guys there, I think, just off the top of my head. Yep. And so they're in a little different position maybe than us or somebody else who has fewer seniors. So, bringing that next class in next year is not a big a deal. You can honor those commitments and you can take care of everybody. And so then now it's looking at the 2022s and the 2023s. And really understanding, how that fits into it, and getting creative, right? I mean, kids could take a gray shirt. Kids could go train at the OTC, the Olympic Training Center, right? Finding creative solutions, to maybe where you give those kids another year and then bring them in because you like them, right? Like everybody we're recruiting, we love, and you want them to have them at Purdue. So just knowing that if we have another guy who's got another year at that weight, okay, maybe, hey, do you want to go to the Olympic Training Center? Is that a good option for you? Do you want to take a gray shirt year? What does that look like? And that'll be different for each family too, and each kid. I think some people going out to the training center, for instance, just as one example, is a good thing. But for some guys, it's not good. It'll set them back. And so just knowing what's the right fit for each kid and that family, I think is going to be important. The money for next year, just to kind of give a little bit of insight too, is you can go over your scholarship limits for next year. But again, right, obviously the economics of it with each school where they're at, they may say, hey, we don't have money. You've got to figure it out. Now, if you have it, okay, great. You put those guys on it. Or maybe, a senior has to come back for a little less. Or can you go find, a pot of money from somewhere else? You know what I mean? Because there's gonna be some flexibility because of the short notice, I guess, nature of this. But
okay, that's good.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
I didn't realize that. That'll be interesting to see who's willing to go over and how they manage it. It'll be, and again, like it's not like it's a big public share of information. There's gonna be more questions than there will be answers nationally about how this works out. But it will be very interesting to see how it works out for different schools.
Yeah, and and in future, we may need to have Jacqueline, from compliance,
back on here,
for sure.
Have her back on to explain the ins and outs, because I don't think I spoke out of turn on anything there. But as always, there are rules that will have to be adhered to as you're navigating it. But generally, this is what I've heard how we can do it, or how a person could do it. So you're not going to be held to the number for that next year. But I don't anticipate schools just saying here's 3 more scholarships, take care of these guys, right? That's
just a blank check. Go.
Yeah, that's not the environment we're living in. To me, that'd be, that's not responsible to where you're at too. So now it's going to be other creative ways to tackle this and help these kids.
Well, and if the NCAA makes that exception, if they've made it's not in perpetuity either. It's a one-off type thing. So you got to rein it back in quickly.
No doubt. And that's where I think communication with your kids, managing expectations, being able to get them timely information. I told our guys, I probably said this 5 minutes ago, but better to over communicate, right? I told them, hey, we're going to have these conversations with you guys. Just don't come to me tomorrow and say, hey, what are we going to do? Because I need to really make sure that I look at where we're at and recruiting and the guys coming in and money and everybody's situation will be a little different. And then we can talk intelligently about the plan moving forward. So to me, it's about communicating and managing expectations so everybody knows what this will be.
Yeah, 100%. Cory, we want to move on to a topic that is going to be near and dear to Ersland's heart. This is a good one.
Absolutely. Great announcement the last couple days that your old mentor is getting the nation's highest civilian honor. Dan Gable going to be presented with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That was just recently announced. Just an awesome honor, completely deserved from the original giant in this sport, probably still the single biggest figure in collegiate wrestling. I don't think that's too controversial to take. But just when you heard that, Coach, what's the first thing that went through your mind?
No, I was just really excited for him. I mean, that is a huge honor. It transcends and crosses over sports, right? And just, into all areas of life. So to have a wrestler, particularly, a coach, that I had learned so much from, right? A guy that I really respected for everything he's done and everything he's earned in his life and the impact he's had on people. I thought that was tremendous. And, for a wrestler to be honored that way, I think is huge. And that's just taking politics out of it. I know, we're living in a time where, in an election year where everything's very political, but I just look at it as a point of, this is great for wrestling and somebody who has brought our sport to, cross different boundaries. To be honored in that way is tremendous. So very happy for him and just really happy too for our sport, to have some of that recognition in the limelight, because we have tremendous leaders in our sport, tremendous coaches, tremendous people, and to see them recognized in such a way feels really good.
It's pretty incredible when you look at the list of obviously people in general, but even just when you look at just the athletes, names like Mariano Rivera, Jerry West, Bob Cousy, Tiger Woods, Roger Staubach, Babe Ruth, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You could keep going. It's pretty. Willie Mays. Like, there are some very historical sports figures on this list, and to add Coach Gable's name to that line is pretty awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. That it's funny when you read that list, because I hadn't looked, to see all of the winners. But that's what we're talking about, right? You're talking about mainstream society superstars, and even though I've known, the impact he's had and what he's been within our community, like I said, hopefully this will shed light, to what wrestling is, and will pull even more casual fans or just more casual sports fans into what we're doing. I think anytime you do that, that's positive. And that's been Coach Gable's, mission since he retired. He wants to continue to help grow wrestling, grow its base. And we've seen, obviously, in recent weeks, that's a tough thing right now. We've had a couple of teams dropped. And so this is where, having this impact and bringing some of these things to light with Olympic sports and specifically wrestling is a big deal.
What's your do you have a go-to story I imagine people find out, people know your history and where you're from, where you matriculated through. Do you have a go-to Dan Gable story?
Well, I mean, there's a lot.
That you can tell.
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing just about him, and it was different ways he would do it, is, mentally the way he worked guys and individually. So just to like insight, and this is some things that I've learned from him too. And I got another story as well, but he would call whoever he had to call within your circle to find out how to handle you, right? What made you tick? What buttons to push? And so he would go that extra mile. It wasn't just, you showing up in the wrestling room and he's coaching the team. If you were struggling with something, he's going to mom, he's going to dad. He might go to your old coach. He might go to your girlfriend and really find out what's going on, what makes you tick, and find the different buttons to push that really kind of got you motivated and inspired you. And it wasn't always fun, right? I mean, there was some really hard lessons to learn there, right? He would challenge you in some really tough ways. But he's doing that because he wants you to reach your goals. He's trying to get you to push yourself, get out of that comfort zone, and get to be where you want to be. So I always found that fascinating. He always went that extra mile with the athletes to find out what made them, made them tick. But it was sometimes the little different things that was off the wall that I found really intriguing. Meaning, like, there's one morning we'd show up and we'd run in Carver all the time. Whether it was sprints up top or running stairs, snake in the stairs. And, we got done running and we went down one day and he made us just turn circles on the basketball court. So he'd just say, hey, turn circles. And then he'd say, stop. And he'd say, what direction are you facing? You know what I mean? And you'd have to tell him, well, I'm facing east or I'm facing south, southwest or whatever. And just to get you thinking, I'm still thinking, I'm still dialed in. What way you just worked your tail off, right? Like you just ran quarter-mile sprints, maybe 16 of them, and you're exhausted, and you're turning circles, and you're just like, which way? Stop. Which way are you facing? And you'd have to tell them. You know what I mean? Or one day you'd be in practice, and all of a sudden, all right, we're done. Stop. Everybody in the sauna. Back then, this was legal. Now it's not legal. So disclaimer: stop. Everybody in the sauna, you know what I mean? No explanation, just everybody in the sauna. And then the next day you show up and, hey, we're going upstairs to a classroom, and then there's a piece of paper and a pencil, and write down for me why you think I stopped practice yesterday. You know what I mean? And sometimes you got the explanation and sometimes you didn't. But it was always the mental exercise, you know what I mean, of what am I supposed to be pulling out of this? What's going on? You know what I mean? He got me to think about things in different ways than I had before. You know what I mean? And so I always really appreciated that. And it's something that you still think about when you're coaching, because not everybody's the same. You want to treat everybody fair. You know what I mean? You want to treat everybody fair, but you're not going to treat everybody the same. They're not the same people. They're individuals. And so those are the, just funny, odd things maybe that happen. And in the moment you didn't quite understand. And as you have some time, you look back, you think about the effect it had on how you looked at things or what you were doing. And it was good. So I really appreciated that. I appreciate it more as time goes on even.
There's a lot of that in college athletics where you go through something with your coach at a young age and the bell doesn't ring for you until a lot later in life. Yeah,
true, right?
There's a lot of that.
There's so much, like we've been talking forever. There's so much in these kids' lives that they're dealing with, on their day-to-day. You can't really fault them for only seeing the 6 inches in front of their nose, most of the time. But when they get that epiphany that, okay, there's this whole bigger picture that I need to take in, that's when something really just clicks for a lot of these kids. And we've seen it, sometimes it happens your second or third year here. And if you're that fortunate, that's awesome. But sometimes it doesn't happen until 5 years out of the program. And that's, those are guys that, a lot of times we'll look back and say, man, I wish I'd have seen the bigger picture. I wish I understood that. It's completely true. Those are some neat exercises. I love people. The older I get, I love people that make me think of something differently. You know, okay, wow, I've heard what you just said 100 times. I've never heard it put quite like that. And so that's neat that Coach Gable was like that. You know, everybody knows about his legendary workouts and what it's like in the room. It's that other stuff that I think a lot of folks don't know about.
Yeah, it's to find those different ways to mentally get kids to kind of latch on to what you're saying or doing or to buy in is key. And when you think about all of the, I don't know if egos is a good thing. That kind of gets a negative rap, right, when you say egos. But we had so many people on those Hawkeye teams that were really accomplished, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had multiple-time national champs and then guys who were winning world championships and even Olympic gold medals around the program. So when I say manage egos, I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean so many guys who have accomplished so much, and you had one figurehead who could still manage all of that and keep people hooked on to what's going on and stay focused on what's really important, I think is really impressive. We've talked a number of times. Every year is different just because people come back in a different place mentally. Like you maybe, going into the previous year, you had an All-American jet or won a national title and you had an outstanding season and you'd won a lot. And then the next year you come in with all of these honors, okay? Maybe you're the defending national champ. Well, how do you keep that same mentality? How do you now stop a young man from trying to protect something, the next national title? You see a lot of guys try to protect it and not, maybe they're not taking the same risk or the same aggressiveness. They're trying to manage it and not give something up or lose, maybe because they feel like, well, I'm the national champ and I shouldn't lose. I can't lose. And so to put a kid in that same place where now it's still about being better and pursuing the next thing, letting the last year go and pursue the next thing is key. And that's a huge part of coaching. And you can see some guys, and I thought he was maybe the best at it. Obviously, when you win 9 straight national championships and 9 in a row.
Is that good?
I think that's good.
I think that's good.
I think so. That's, to reinvent yourself over and over, again, is key. And even, he would even still say, because I've heard interviews where I think when they were going for the 10th, I think the phrase was going for the mark in College Park. It was College Park, Maryland, and the mark was 10. And maybe even it got away from that team. They got away from some things, that had led to their previous 9. And I've heard him talk about that before. And so now, okay, you won 9, but now you got to kind of really go back, tear it down, look through it, and then rebuild it again in a different way. That's hard. That's hard. So a lot of respect for him and how he was able to do that.
Well, and you were a part of, the final season. I know we've talked before about the pressure going in because everyone knew that was the year. There's a lot of pressure on you guys. There was a documentary crew, that's kind of omnipresent, and you had to perform. Everyone knew you had to perform to not let the wrestling world down, much less, yourselves and everything that goes into that. So just, to reinvent. I love that term and that concept in college athletics because, people think of programs. They don't think of each season as being its own entity. The team that you have right now will never be your team again. Next year is going to be completely different. So it's cool to be able to live through that and then apply those lessons.
Yeah, no doubt.
The only constant is change.
Yep.
The only constant is change. So, congrats again to Coach Gable. That's a phenomenal honor and very, very, as Cory said, very, very deserving. And, best wishes from Purdue Wrestling. And we're excited for him on that. You mentioned this a little bit earlier, Tony, and I hate to go from a really happy story to a somber note, but we saw another program drop this last week as Fresno State announced that they were cutting their program. The second one on the West Coast. The hard part for me is they just brought the program back. They were in their 3rd year.
Yeah, I think going into their 3rd, right? Wasn't 2018? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was 2018 was their first year back from that reinstatement.
Yeah. So, that's just tough. You take an alumni base and you bring the program back and you get them excited and then you pull the rug out. And it's just unfortunate to see,
Yeah, it leaves you very confused and frustrated. I know, Jason Borelli well. My first job out of college at Central Michigan was working for his father, Tom. And I grew up, as a coach, maybe those first couple of years, and Jason was in high school. So I knew Jason really well. He's a good man, wants to do things the right way, does do things the right way. Have some really good, outstanding kids in that program, and they were going to do some things, as well. And it's not over yet. I'm not waving the white flag, and I'm not taking the knee.
No, Stanford's actually they've made some real progress. So I have high hopes for Stanford.
Right. And Troy Steiner, a teammate of mine there for a few years at Iowa, and him and his brother Terry, outstanding people, right? The men who do things the right way. And so that's where, sometimes, when a program's dropped, you think, okay, was there, different issues within the program? And it doesn't appear like here that was the case. And it's just down to the finances of what's going on. But, I don't think that's something that can't be overcome. I think we got to look, at other solutions, creative solutions of that should always be the absolute last resort. And I don't get the feeling that's the case. You know what I mean? Based on, how these guys were notified and how it was, relayed to the team and different things like that. So, I'm just hoping we can all be better and respect what these kids are doing. We've talked about that a lot. We've had our guys on the show, right? I mean, you've heard from D-Schroed, Bruner, Leidy, Nate, all of these tremendous things. Jared Florell, like tremendous student athletes, and what they're going to go on and do in their life is a huge impact. So, it is. It's confusing for me. Very frustrating, confusing, because good men who have done the right things, and dropped just like that. And so, I'm hoping other programs will take pause and really examine where we can do this. How can we still respect what these kids are doing and not make this a step? And I think it's interesting when you look. Didn't William and Mary just had some sports reinstated? They had cut several sports, and I'm not as familiar
that situation's crazy at William and Mary. You had a president step down and a new president come in, and they reopened the books, and that situation's nuts.
Yep. So, I just want to make sure that this is absolutely the last step before you sever ties, because you don't want to cut a program and then be where William and Mary is at, right? Like you said, it's a mess. People are stepping down and parting ways with the colleges. And I just feel like if we took a pause and examined things and maybe tried to really ride out, the pandemic and see where we're at, weather the storm, and then let's make some really, educated decisions after that. I feel like we're making decisions in the middle of the whirlwind. And to me, that's never the right situation. So let's take a breath, take a pause, and really find creative solutions here if we can.
The hard part for me about Fresno was there were a couple things. I grew up a couple hours north of Fresno out in California, and it is a wrestling hungry part of the state, the West Coast. They've got some of the most successful high school programs in the state right in that area. Coach Steiner done a great job with his attendance. They were top 10 in the nation every year. It's not a lack of demand. They love wrestling there. And so it's, you bring up some good points and some good ideas as far as the fact of how did we get to this decision? Like, let's pump the brakes. Let's really look at this and try to figure it out before we, get the axe out and start swinging it.
Yep. Well, and because you brought up Stanford, I mean, it's not a final decision, but those people, they've really rallied, and you're right. And we're talking about Fresno, an area that has tradition in that program, and they had an All-American, in the last couple of years, Hokett.
Yeah, Josh Hokett,
who's now in the NFL, right? He was a dual threat, football player, wrestler. And so they've had some really good things go on, and that's a hotbed for wrestling there. So if you give that community a chance, if you lay out and say, hey, here's where we're at, coach, you know what I mean? What can we do, to make it through this? I have no doubt that the wrestling community would rally. Is hard, we're a hard group and working, group of people. So that's where I'm disappointed in like how these guys have been notified, and the lack of opportunity to respond or truly respond and help within the situation. So.
Yeah,
I think you make a great point about, trying to be calm amidst the storm. It's such a lesson in leadership that, it applies here, but it applies everywhere right now. Hit the pause button, take all the information in, make an informed decision rather than saying, okay, I need to decide right now. There's so much to take from that.
Well, and you've seen these other schools that have like brought in outside consultants too. And I that's a tough move for me, in the fact that you're going to bring in people who don't necessarily know. They come in with assumed opinions and so on and so forth, and they don't always take the time to dig in and look and find out what's actually going on. It's like you said, it's easy to just like, oh, here's the numbers, here's the deal, let's cut it and go.
Well, and I think there needs to be, what we're seeing right now, and let's use, tie all of this together. For those who follow Tom Ryan, he's been really talking a lot on Twitter lately about monetizing the sport in different ways. And we've also seen clearly last night, Penn State had another, stream, had another wrestling card on Rockfin. I think there's ways to monetize this and create earning, potential with some of those things, and I think we need to be creative in that way now. Okay. We as a sport need to really take a look at outside the box things that you can do to create some more earning potential for this sport that's going to help ADs and just kind of these people who don't understand the sport. Right. I'm not talking about, I don't think we're ever going to be football, but man, you see the popularity of what's going on with these cards, or even UFC, where there's that transition with wrestlers, right? You got the UNC Gage. Is it Gage?
I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but you wrestled in Colorado, right?
Right. Jordan Burroughs had wrestled him, 157-pounder. And so there's some things there, I think, some unique things that we can do to help, bridge the gap within the sport. And that's something all teams could do. You could create some very interesting cards and create some earning potential and divide up the revenue and go some different directions. And I think we need to kind of look at what's going on and say, hey, there may be an opportunity here. Our fan base, people are loyal, and wrestling fans, they love it. They can't get enough of it. You look at, Super 32 and the entries they're still going to have, and some of these USA wrestling, they're flocking to them still. They're hardcore about the sport and their love for it. So I really think it's an opportunity now to look outside the box and find creative ways to monetize this and maybe ease the burden as well.
That's one thing I love about last spring when the Big Ten Network made a really big deal, and they should have, about, how well wrestling did on TV. There was a lot of surprise. Wow, I can't believe wrestling pulled in these kinds of numbers. And for folks like us, the retort was, well, that's because you don't understand wrestling. The wrestling fan base, we're going to watch a great match. It doesn't necessarily have to include our team. If Ohio State's wrestling Penn State or Iowa's wrestling Minnesota, we're going to watch it if we can, because it's going to be fantastic. And that's what we care about. If Minnesota's playing Nebraska in football or basketball, that may not necessarily be the case. So it's a very loyal, like you said, fan base, and to get people to understand that is really key.
No doubt. In some ways, right, you're very concerned because of COVID and where that has put us. Right, it does. There's just genuine concern amongst furloughs and layoffs and different things like that. At the same time, if you pay attention within our sport, I guess, what's going on, people want to see these cards. They want to see these matches. And so there is an opportunity, I think, for us as a sport, if we're willing to take some risks and to try some new things. We can't be stuck just in the past. We've got to kind of stretch ourselves, and I'm hoping that we'll see some more of that in the future. I know I'd like to be proactive in that and finding different ways to do some of these matchups.
Absolutely. News came out today, Coach. We'll keep moving along here. News came out, was it today or last night, that USA will not be sending a team to Senior Worlds in Serbia in December. Obviously an unfortunate thing, but as we keep alluding to, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts in the world, and that's just kind of where we are right now. Yeah,
it's it's disappointing. You'd love to see the United States send a team just from a competition standpoint. Obviously, you've got to respect, and I glossed over the article. I didn't get a chance to really pick through it or maybe digest it as much as I should yet. But obviously it's health concerns, and I think there's some athletes who maybe would be hesitant about going. I'm sure you have some who are like all gung ho, let's go. But you've got to respect, people who, say, hey, with this, the turmoil, what's going on in the world, I'm not really, eager to go. You got to respect that. And so I certainly understand where the decision's coming from. But at the same time, it is interesting within the states, right, that you see wrestling everywhere. And so, I kind of look forward to kind of going through that some more and really hearing about, what the reasoning is behind the decision. I think just for my own personal interest, I'd like to know their thoughts on why they felt so strongly about not sending a team.
It's an interesting development too, in light of, it's an Olympic year. To not wrestle in such a high level, competition leading up to 2021 in Tokyo, and then all the ramifications for, okay, if there are issues, worldwide health concerns in December, are those going to be fixed by in time to be able to pull off Tokyo? So, I think they moved the games by a year, hoping that things would pass enough. And I guess that's still the hope, but with every day that goes by, it's one more thing seems to happen that makes people start or continue to question. So I hate seeing that development. Like you said, you have to respect the decision. I'm sure it was not an easy one for USA Wrestling to make.
No, I'm sure Coach Zadek, Rich Bender, everybody at USA Wrestling would love to have a group there, and no doubt in my mind. But if you're going to err in a direction, I guess erring in caution, right? Like I said, you have to kind of respect erring that decision in caution for now. But I would love to kind of know what all went into the decision. You know what I mean? Like, looking at every aspect of it and how they arrived where they're at. And as I said, I haven't had a chance to really dive into the article maybe the way I should have or talk to anybody. But, it's a tough deal. Yeah, there is.
Getting on to some more exciting things for the Boilermakers. Started our full practice schedule. We went to 20-hour weeks here. We are in week 2, week 3?
Well, I guess October 10 is when we started, so week 2 here, right?
Yep.
Kind of, yeah.
I wasn't a math major, so I'm sorry. I'm not gonna be able to pull that one off quick in my head. But yeah, it's it's nice to get to see the guys a little bit more regularly. Get them all in there together. How are things been going?
It's going good. Boys are sore. Beat up. We had some really good training last week, and we were finally able to really get after it. And so I was happy with it. The consistency still isn't where I would like it, but you see some really good things out of these guys. They're talented, they're motivated. It's about getting them to kind of repeat things now. You're, like I said, you're seeing some things, but you got to see it, every time. You got to know that you can kind of execute that under all conditions. Different looks from different partners, when you're feeling good, late when you're hurting, being able to go get one and score. So it's still a work in progress, but I'm excited knowing what they're capable of. Now it's getting these guys to be able to repeat it, consistently.
We've talked about this kind of offline, but I think it's important to take note of, like, with the adjustment to our season, it's interesting to look at the different approach to the way we're kind of starting things off and the way we're moving along. Because, if you slide the calendar and you look at how this would compare to a normal year, we're still kind of at the end of summer right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so how are you altering the training at this point in order to keep that slow build and that burn towards competition?
Yep. Even though we're allowed to go 6 days a week now, right? They call it your 6-day week, 20 hours. We're still not quite there yet. We've got one day that is strictly just lifting and, strength and conditioning only. And we've got another off day. So they're on the mats, really 4 or 5 days a week, with 2 days still, which is one less, than what we would really be when we're on the eve of the season. Right. We do have most of our certifications done though. That's been nice. Meaning, the weight class stuff, we only have a handful of those guys left. So I like that, but what you don't want is these guys get that false sense of, the season's so far away, so they're not on their diet, bringing that descent with their weight down. Mm-hmm. Because with a reduced season in terms of number of weeks, you're not going to have necessarily that adjustment period to get your weight under control. Some guys come in and you go to these open tournaments and you weigh in and you might not wrestle for 3-4 hours sometimes, depending on, where you're at in the bracket and stuff. And so they've had chances to kind of over the first 2 weeks really get their weight under control. You're not going to have that, in my opinion. Now, we're going to go straight into duels, it looks like, and, you're going to be into Big Ten competition much sooner. So you've got to be bringing your weight down now, or, looking at that slow, steady descent where your body has a chance to adjust, and then you're living closer to your weight class. So that just doesn't have the impact on your performance. Those are things I think you really need to be working on now, and perfecting, because if you wait until you get close to January, the season's going to come and go so fast. And I think you're going to put yourself in a tough spot,
Yeah. We had a nice meeting with podcast favorite Elaine Wanstreet earlier this week, and got the guys starting to turn those gears on these guys and get them thinking the right way and putting some of the stuff you're talking about into practice. So that's exciting. Any special mentions from the room? Anybody looking especially good? Anybody ahead of where you hope they would be? Obviously, don't want to put you on the spot too much, but is there anybody that jumps to mind?
Well, I think that, the guys you would expect have looked pretty solid. Devin Schroeder, has looked solid. He's still got things to do. If you're going to ask me, am I happy with the guys? No, but that's not unusual this time of year, right? That's not unusual. So that's not a knock on them. We've got a lot of work to do, and I'm hoping that's how they feel. We've got to get better, and we've got to take advantage of this time to do that. But, Devin Schroeder, really good from a leadership standpoint. Effort's been great. The mistakes that he's made, it's not an effort kind of a deal. Sometimes it's a position deal, right? I think, Kendall Coleman has added some different attacks to his game as well, and he needed to do that. So we're excited about that.
That is exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah. And then we've got a lot of really hardworking dudes too, right? Good luck outworking, guys like Panola, Max Lyons, some of those guys. So, I'm comfortable with where we're at, but I'm not real happy. You know what I mean? I don't know if, like I said, maybe till Saturday night if you had 10 national champs and
you can be happy. You just don't have to be satisfied.
Is that how that works?
You can't be happy in October. It's not allowed.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
not
so
allowed.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Saying,
okay. I'll take the L there. That's my fault. Okay, can't be happy in October. New rule. I'll write it down.
Yeah, and when I say that, obviously, because I'm laughing. You're not walking around with your head down, kicking your can in the dirt. You're not doing that.
You're not Eeyore?
You're not Eeyore, but you really gotta, now's the time to really pick apart what you're doing. And yes, you should still celebrate those good things you're doing. The sport's hard. You need to celebrate those things, especially if you're a young guy. Like some of these freshmen, you come in and you're trying to make jumps. You got to celebrate the small victories that present themselves. But at the same time, boy, you've really got to just stay focused on, hey, it's about the process, about how good can I be. That process should never end. You know what I mean? It should never end. And so, yeah, I think just, that mature outlook is key. And we talked about that a little bit. The young guys, you're stuck with that 6 inches in front of your face. The world's kind of swimming and swirling by, but you've got to really just, okay, my job is, every day to wake up and get better, and I guess that's where we want to be, not satisfied, not unhappy. Don't get me wrong, not unhappy, but hey, I'm not satisfied. I'm motivated.
Cory, you had one more thing, didn't you?
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, Coach, real briefly, Super 32 this weekend and all that goes into, that event. Just some final thoughts before we know the results. I
mean, it's a deep tournament. I mean, it's such a deep tournament. It's a real grind over the course of a couple days that there's guys there. You always have your seeds. And so you have the names that people recognize. But, man, when I say depth, there's those kids in that bracket that you just haven't seen, and they're tough. And they're going to show up, and they're going to knock some people off. That's what makes it such a grind. So I'm really looking forward to watching matches. We've got some guys who have committed to us that are going to be there, but we also have a lot of guys that we're recruiting and we're really high on. So just excited to watch them compete because I think they'll do really well. So we're excited for them. But at the same time, you're really watching, the depth is really good there. So you're hoping to pick up some guys that you didn't know as much about early on.
Yeah, it's a star-studded affair. It's been fun to look at the field. There's a variety of publications out there that have been talking about it because it is a huge field this year, and it is very, very, very deep at almost every weight.
Yep.
So
good luck to everybody competing down there. Stay healthy and
travel safe.
Yep. Actually, one last thing. It is football game week.
Oh, yes, it is.
I know fans aren't allowed in the stands and fans are being discouraged from tailgating. But you guys have plans for game day Saturday?
I'll be watching. I will be watching. I love college football. I think I may have said this before. College football is just such a unique tradition, and the loyalty and to your teams. I love it, and so I'll be glued to the TV. Watching. It's that sense of normalcy that you want, and so, I'll be tuned in and hanging on every snap of the ball.
I'm excited to hear the sounds out of Ross 8 Stadium. I'm very fortunate to live close enough to where, that new Jumbotron, it shakes the neighborhood. So, I know that, they had some of those movie nights with the kids in there, and we could hear it pretty clearly from the stadium. So
really,
yeah. So I'm excited to hear some of that stuff. The sounds of game day coming through the neighborhood. It's gonna be an exciting weekend.
Hear our guy Carson Tucker narrating your Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely.
Yep. No, and really needed, right? I mean, at a time like this, really needed. So we wish obviously Purdue football the best. But more than that, we wish everybody in the Big Ten the best, right? Stay safe, you know what I mean? And let's get this schedule in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's get it started. Let's get a full season in. It's to everybody's benefit.
For sure. Guys, we're going to leave it there. We'll be back with you next week. We've got some fun topics we're working on for next week, so stay tuned. And I know the scheduling is continuing to work behind the scenes. Hopefully we've got some great news to share on that front soon.
Yeah, we're getting close. So you're not just teasing right now. There's some real movement going on here. Yes,
we're getting there.
For Coach, for Tanner, I'm Cory. Thanks for joining us again. Boiler up.